Elvis stepped onto the stage and noticed two people in the crowd who were crying. A mother and her son were shocked to see each other. They hadn't spoken for 10 years. But when Elvis brought them on stage, they reconciled in front of 50,000 people. The Memphis Coliseum buzzed with electric energy as thousands of fans filled every seat, their voices creating a thunderous roar of anticipation that seemed to shake the very foundations of the massive arena. Colorful lights danced across the venue like living rainbows, while the sweet aroma of popcorn and cotton candy drifted through the air, mixing with the excitement and nervous energy of the crowd. Vendors moved through the aisles selling Elvis memorabilia, t-shirts, buttons, and photographs that fans clutched like precious treasures. The atmosphere was thick with expectation, as if the very air itself was charged with the promise of magic about to unfold. Tonight was the night everyone had been waiting for. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was about to take the stage for what promised to be an unforgettable performance that would be talked about for generations to come. Among the sea of excited faces, two individuals sat in completely different sections of the arena, both unaware of the other's presence and the miraculous reunion that fate was orchestrating. Margaret Thompson, a 62-year-old woman with silver hair that caught the arena lights and tired eyes that held decades of unspoken sorrow, clutched her ticket with trembling hands. The ticket stub was worn from her nervous handling, and she had read every word on it dozens of times since arriving. She had purchased this seat months ago during a moment of desperate hope, praying that Elvis's music might bring some joy back into her life after years of heartbreak and loneliness that had consumed her days and haunted her nights. Margaret wore her best dress tonight, a navy blue number that she had been saving for a special occasion, though special occasions had been few and far between in recent years. Her purse sat primly on her lap, containing tissues she suspected she might need, and a small photograph she couldn't bring herself to look at. Several rows behind her, in a different section entirely, sat David Thompson, a 35-year-old man with his father's strong jawline and his mother's gentle eyes, features he was unaware he shared with the woman sitting not far away. His hands, calloused from years of construction work, fidgeted nervously with his own ticket. He had bought his ticket on impulse just 3 days ago, driven by a sudden, overwhelming urge he couldn't quite explain. The memories came flooding back as he waited. How his mother used to play Elvis records when he was a child, before everything fell apart between them like a house of cards in a strong wind. Those memories felt bittersweet as he waited for the show to begin, each song he remembered carrying with it the ghost of his mother's voice singing along. David wore his only good shirt, a crisp white button-down that he had ironed carefully that afternoon, though he wasn't sure why he had taken such care with his appearance. Deep down, perhaps he hoped for some kind of miracle, though he would never admit such a thing out loud. Neither Margaret nor David knew that the other was there, sitting in the same arena, breathing the same air, sharing the same anticipation. They hadn't spoken in exactly 10 years, 2 months, and 15 days, not since that terrible argument that had torn their family apart like a tornado ripping through everything they had built together over the years. The wounds ran deep, infected by time and festering with regret, and pride had built walls between them that seemed impossible to tear down. Both had picked up the phone countless times over the years, fingers hovering over familiar numbers, but neither had found the courage to make that first move toward reconciliation. Margaret often lay awake at night wondering how David was doing, whether he was happy, whether he ever thought of her. David, meanwhile, drove past his childhood home every few months, slowing down as he passed, hoping for a glimpse of the woman who had raised him with such love and care before everything went wrong. Tonight, the universe had conspired to bring them to the same place, though neither knew it yet. As the lights dimmed dramatically, the crowd erupted into deafening cheers that seemed to go on forever. The anticipation was palpable, electric, charging through the air like lightning before a storm. Spotlights began to sweep across the stage in mesmerizing patterns, creating dancing shadows and brilliant pools of light that had the crowd craning their necks to catch the first glimpse of their idol. Then, like magic materialized from from thin air, Elvis appeared in his iconic white jumpsuit, adorned with intricate rhinestone patterns that caught every light in the arena and made him shine like a star fallen to earth. The jumpsuit was a work of art in itself, with elaborate eagle designs and flowing cape that seemed to capture the very essence of American showmanship. His presence commanded immediate attention from every soul in the arena, and the entire venue fell under his spell as if hypnotized by his charisma. The screaming reached a fever pitch as fans held up signs, threw flowers, and reached toward the stage with desperate devotion. Thank you very much," Elvis said into the microphone, his distinctive voice sending waves of excitement through the crowd. The audience screamed with delight as he launched into his opening number, "That's All Right." His voice was powerful and smooth, filling every corner of the massive venue with its warmth and charisma. Margaret found herself swaying to the music, tears already beginning to form in her eyes like morning dew on delicate petals. Elvis's voice transported her instantly back to happier times when she would dance in her kitchen while making breakfast for her young son, the radio playing softly in the background. Those were the golden days when David would wake up to Elvis playing on the radio and would come running to the kitchen in his dinosaur pajamas, his hair sticking up in impossible directions, asking her to dance with him before school. She could almost feel his small hands in hers, could almost hear his little voice trying to sing along to "Can't Help Falling in Love" while she spun him around the linoleum floor. Those memories were so vivid, so precious that they made her chest ache with longing. She closed her eyes and let the music wash over her, allowing herself to remember when love filled their home like sunshine streaming through clean windows. Meanwhile, David felt his chest tighten with emotion as Elvis's voice washed over him like a tide of memory and regret. He remembered being 8 years old, standing on his mother's feet as she taught him to dance to "Love Me Tender," her hands gentle on his shoulders as she guided him through the steps. He could still remember the smell of her perfume, the way she hummed along softly, the feeling of being completely safe and loved in that moment. Those precious memories felt like they belonged to a different lifetime, before misunderstandings and stubborn pride had destroyed their relationship like a wrecking ball through a beautiful home. David blinked hard, trying to keep the tears at bay, but Elvis's voice seemed to unlock every emotion he had carefully buried over the years. He found himself wondering if his mother still listened to Elvis, if she still danced alone in her kitchen, if she ever thought of those perfect mornings they had shared. As Elvis continued his performance, moving through classics like Hound Dog and Don't Be Cruel, his keen eyes scanned the audience. He had always prided himself on connecting with his fans, reading their faces, and understanding their emotions. Tonight, something unusual caught his attention. In the midst of all the screaming, cheering, and celebration that filled the arena like a joyous storm, Elvis noticed two people who stood out from the crowd like solitary islands in an ocean of happiness. A woman in her 60s was crying, not tears of joy like many others around her, but tears that spoke of deep pain and longing, tears that seemed to carry the weight of years of sorrow. Her hands were pressed to her heart as she listened to the music, and her whole body seemed to radiate a profound sadness that cut through the joy around her like a knife through silk. The way she held herself, the particular tilt of her head, the desperate way she clutched her handkerchief, everything about her spoke of loss and yearning. Elvis had seen many crying fans over the years, but there was something different about this woman's tears, something that called to him across the vast space between stage and audience. Then, as his gaze swept across another section like a searchlight seeking truth, Elvis spotted a man in his 30s who was also crying. There was something about the way this man held himself, the particular expression of grief mixed with nostalgia on his face, that struck Elvis as remarkably similar to the woman he had just observed. The man's posture, the way he wiped his tears with the back of his hand, even the way he seemed to be fighting some internal battle, it all seemed to mirror the woman's pain in an almost uncanny way. Elvis had performed for millions of people throughout his career, and he had developed an almost supernatural ability to read emotions and understand human pain. His intuition, honed by years of connecting with audiences, was telling him that these two souls were somehow connected by invisible threads of shared sorrow. Something about these two individuals called out to him across the distance, and he felt an irresistible urge to reach out to them, to understand their story, to help heal whatever wounds were causing such profound sadness in the midst of so much joy. As Elvis transitioned into Love Me Tender, a song known for its ability to touch hearts and heal wounds, he made a decision that would change everything. He stepped away from his microphone stand and walked to the edge of the stage, his eyes still focused on the crying woman. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elvis said, his voice cutting through the music as the band softly continued playing behind him. "I want to tell you something about the power of music. Sometimes it has a way of bringing people together when they need it most." The audience fell into a hushed silence, sensing that something special was about to happen. Elvis's words carried a weight and sincerity that commanded attention from every person in the arena. "I see someone out there who's hurting," Elvis continued, pointing gently toward Margaret's section. "Ma'am, would you come up here with me? Don't be afraid. The king wants to meet you." Margaret's eyes widened in complete shock. She looked around frantically, wondering if Elvis could possibly be talking to her. The people around her began cheering and encouraging her to go to the stage. With trembling legs and a racing heart, she slowly made her way through the crowd, as ushers helped guide her toward the stage. As Margaret climbed the steps to join Elvis under the bright lights, the audience erupted in supportive applause. Elvis took her hand gently and smiled at her with genuine warmth. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked into the microphone. "Margaret," she replied, her voice barely audible over the sound system. "Margaret Thompson." "Well, Margaret Thompson, you have the most beautiful soul I can see from way up here," Elvis said, his words bringing fresh tears to her eyes. "But I sense you're carrying some heavy pain in your heart. Is that right?" Margaret nodded, unable to speak as emotion overwhelmed her. The kindness in Elvis's eyes made her feel safe and understood in a way she hadn't experienced in years. But Elvis wasn't finished. His intuition was telling him there was more to this story. He scanned the crowd again until his eyes found David, who was watching the scene unfold with growing amazement and a strange sense of recognition. "Hold on just a minute, Margaret," Elvis said. Then, addressing the crowd again, he continued, "I believe there's someone else out there who's connected to this story. Sir, in the blue shirt, Section C, would you come up here too?" David's blood turned cold as he realized Elvis was pointing directly at him. His heart pounded as he looked toward the stage and saw a figure standing next to Elvis. Even from a distance, something about the woman's posture and the way she held herself seemed familiar. "Go on, honey," shouted a woman sitting next to David. "Elvis is calling you." With legs that felt like they were made of lead, David made his way through the crowd. Each step toward the stage felt like walking through a dream. As he climbed the stairs and got closer to the spotlight, his worst fears and greatest hopes collided in his chest. When David reached the stage and the lights illuminated his face, Margaret gasped audibly. The microphone picked up her sharp intake of breath, and the entire arena heard it. Mother and son stood facing each other for the first time in 10 years, with Elvis Presley standing between them and 50,000 people watching in stunned silence. "Oh my God," Margaret whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "David? Mom?" David's voice cracked with emotion as he stared at the woman who had given him life, who had raised him with love and who had been absent from his world for far too long. Elvis looked between them with understanding dawning in his eyes. His performer's intuition had been right. These two souls were connected by something deeper than coincidence. "Well, I'll be," he said softly into the microphone. "Looks like we've got ourselves a family reunion here tonight." The audience was completely captivated by the unfolding drama. Many people in the crowd began crying themselves as they witnessed this unexpected moment of raw human emotion. "I've missed you so much," Margaret said, tears streaming down her face. The microphone caught every word, and her confession echoed throughout the arena. "I've missed you too, Mom," David replied, his own tears flowing freely. "I'm so sorry for everything. I've wanted to call you every single day for 10 years. Elvis stepped back slightly, giving them space while keeping the microphone close enough to capture their words. He understood that he was witnessing something sacred, the kind of moment that music was meant to create. "What happened between you two?" Elvis asked gently, his voice full of compassion. Margaret and David looked at each other, both struggling to remember exactly how their argument had escalated into a decade of silence. "It was so stupid," Margaret said. "We fought about money, about choices, about things that don't matter at all compared to having each other. I said things I didn't mean," David added. "I was angry and young and foolish. I let my pride keep me from picking up the phone, and I let my pride stop me from reaching out too," Margaret confessed. "I kept waiting for you to call first, and you never did." Elvis nodded knowingly. "Pride's a dangerous thing," he said to the audience. "It can keep us from the people we love most. But you know what's stronger than pride?" He paused for dramatic effect. "Love. Love is always stronger." The crowd responded with thunderous applause, many of them thinking about their own broken relationships and estranged family members. "Margaret, David," Elvis continued, "I want you to know that tonight, music brought you back together. But it was the love that was always there in your hearts that made this moment possible." Elvis then began to sing "Love Me Tender" without any musical accompaniment, his voice pure and powerful in the silence of the arena. As he sang, Margaret and David moved closer to each other, drawn together by the beauty of the moment and the healing power of forgiveness. When Elvis reached the chorus, something magical happened. Margaret began to sing along, her voice trembling but sweet. David joined in, remembering how they used to sing this song together when he was a child. Soon, mother and son were harmonizing together, their voices blending in a way that spoke of shared DNA and shared memories. The entire arena was mesmerized. 50,000 people sat in complete silence except for the sound of Elvis and the reunited family singing together. Many people in the audience were crying, moved by the raw emotion and beauty of the moment. As the final notes of the song faded into the electrified air, Margaret and David fell into each other's arms, embracing for the first time in a decade. The hug was desperate, clinging, as if they were both afraid the other might disappear if they let go. Margaret's small frame seemed to disappear into David's strong arms, while he buried his face in her silver hair and breathed in the familiar scent of her perfume, the same perfume she had worn throughout his childhood. The hug lasted for what felt like an eternity, and the audience erupted in the loudest applause of the night. People were standing, cheering, crying, and celebrating this triumph of love over pride. Many in the crowd were openly sobbing, moved beyond words by witnessing such raw, honest emotion. Cameras flashed throughout the arena as people tried to capture this historic moment, this beautiful testament to the power of forgiveness and the unbreakable bonds of family love. Some audience members were already thinking about their own estranged family members, their own broken relationships that pride had kept them from mending. This moment was touching hearts throughout the arena, inspiring people to reconsider their own stubborn silences. Elvis stepped forward and put his arms around both of them. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the crowd, "this is what music is all about. This is why we're all here tonight. Music doesn't just entertain us, it heals us, it brings us together, and it reminds us of what's truly important in life." The applause continued for several minutes as Margaret and David held each other, both of them sobbing with relief and joy. 10 years of pain and loneliness melted away in that embrace, replaced by the overwhelming realization that they had wasted so much precious time. "I love you, David," Margaret whispered into her son's ear. "I love you too, Mom," he replied. "I'm never letting you go again." Elvis smiled as he watched them, knowing that he had just witnessed one of the most beautiful moments of his entire career. "You know what?" he said into the microphone. "I think we need to celebrate this reunion properly. Margaret and David, would you stay up here with me for the rest of the show?" The mother and son looked at each other and then at Elvis, both nodding enthusiastically. They remained on stage as Elvis continued his concert, and for the next hour they sang along, danced together, and celebrated their newfound connection. As the concert came to an end, Elvis addressed the audience one final time. "Tonight, you all witnessed something incredible. You saw the power of forgiveness, the strength of family love, and the magic that happens when music brings people together. Margaret and David, thank you for sharing your story with us." He turned to face them directly. "And you too. Promise me something. Promise me you'll never let pride come between you again. Life's too short and love is too precious." Both Margaret and David nodded, still holding hands as they had been throughout the entire second half of the concert. "We promise," they said in unison. As the lights came up and the crowd began to file out of the arena, people were buzzing with excitement about what they had just witnessed. Conversations filled the air as fans discussed the incredible reunion they had seen unfold before their eyes. Many of them were already calling family members they hadn't spoken to in years, inspired by the reunion they had witnessed. Cell phones lit up throughout the arena as people reached out to siblings, parents, children, and old friends, suddenly understanding that life was too short for grudges and too precious for pride. The parking lot became a symphony of emotional phone calls as people sat in their cars, crying and laughing and reconnecting with loved ones. "I saw something tonight that changed my life," became a common refrain as fans shared their experience with anyone who would listen. Local news crews, having heard about the unprecedented event, were already setting up interviews with audience members who wanted to share how the reunion had affected them personally. Margaret and David remained on stage for a few more minutes, still hardly believing that they were together again after so many years of pain and separation. Elvis had given them something more valuable than any concert performance. He had given them back their family, their connection, their chance at a future filled with love instead of regret. The stage that had seemed so vast and intimidating now felt intimate and safe, a sacred space where miracles could happen. "I have so much to tell you," Margaret whispered to her son, her voice hoarse from crying and singing. "So much has happened, so much I wanted to share with you." "I know, Mom," David replied, his voice equally emotional. "I have 10 years of stories to tell you too, 10 years of missing you every single day." They stood there in the gradually dimming lights, holding hands like a mother and her young child, both of them marveling at how quickly a decade of pain could dissolve in the face of unconditional love. "What now?" David asked his mother as they finally prepared to leave the stage. "Now we go home," Margaret replied, squeezing his hand. "Together. We have 10 years to catch up on." As they walked off the stage and into their new beginning, the echo of Elvis's voice seemed to follow them. "Love is always stronger than pride." It was a lesson that would stay with them for the rest of their lives, and a reminder of the night when music worked a miracle in the heart of Memphis. The backstage area was bustling with crew members and security, but they all stepped aside respectfully as Margaret and David made their way toward the exit, still clinging to each other as if afraid this dream might end. "We'll take it slow," Margaret said as they reached the stage door. "We have time now, all the time in the world." "I'd like that," David replied. "Maybe we could start with coffee tomorrow morning, like we used to do when I was little and you'd let me have hot chocolate while you had your coffee." Margaret's eyes filled with fresh tears at the memory. "I'd love that more than anything in the world. I still make coffee the same way, you know. I never changed anything in the kitchen, hoping that someday came tonight." David finished softly, squeezing her hand. The reunion of Margaret and David Thompson became legendary among Elvis fans, a story that was told and retold for decades to come. Newspaper headlines the next morning read, "Elvis creates miracle at Memphis concert," and "The King reunites mother and son after decade apart." The story spread across the country like wildfire, touching hearts and inspiring countless other families to bridge their own gaps of pride and misunderstanding. Video footage of the reunion, captured by audience members and news crews, it became one of the most watched moments in music history. The image of Elvis standing between a crying mother and son, facilitating their reconciliation, became an iconic symbol of the healing power of music and the importance of family forgiveness. It served as a powerful reminder that sometimes the most beautiful moments in life happen when we least expect them, and that music has the power to heal even the deepest wounds that time and pride have created.